Today we're getting into the latest Tesla news, including tons of new features coming to Tesla vehicles soon, how tariffs are affecting the entire auto industry, Tesla ending sales of particular cars in particular markets, so let's get into it, and a special thanks to Lectric for sponsoring this video. First up today, Tesla is always in the process of updating their vehicles via software. It's one of the best parts about owning a Tesla vehicle, and there are some great features coming very soon. But first, in the latest Tesla software updates, we've seen improvements like adjusting the Cybertruck suspension in the Tesla app, allowing that car and others to have standard options for autopilot, and updates to the energy consumption page. But this update also included some other undocumented changes. The new navigation icons are slowly rolling out to some customers, and they're redesigned to be less elongated and also have a white border to make them stand out more on satellite. They've added more contextual tooltip pop-ups, so for things like streaming audio through Bluetooth, a pop-up will appear prompting you to use the car's built-in streaming apps. Then in navigation, charging locations now appear on the map if you have points of interest activated. So this seems to be more destination-type charging. And then when navigating, turn-by-turn vocal guidance will now immediately stop when you reach your destination. Previously, it would finish out its phrase, but if you're already there, it will simply cut it off. Traffic visualizations have been improved, and the odometer has been updated to show more detailed information, to show mileage with a decimal point, and also show more info all at once. Rainbow Roads visualization has been updated, and information like sudden slowdowns is now displayed more seamlessly, and then service mode has been updated with a number of improvements. Then lastly, UI transparency has been added to Intel-powered Tesla vehicles, which previously did not support this change. It was only available on the latest cars with AMD chips. So there's a lot of cool stuff to see there, but Tesla just announced their spring update, which will be rolling out soon. First, this is bringing adaptive headlights to all Tesla vehicles that have the hardware for it. They say, high beams adapt to reduce glare for other drivers and cyclists by detecting other road users and selectively dimming individual pixels of the headlight. Your high beams stay on more often for greater visibility at night. If your vehicle has the necessary hardware, you will see the setting under Controls, Lights, Adaptive Headlights. As far as we know, this should come to all Tesla vehicles from the last few years with the exception of the Cybertruck. For the new version of the Model S and X, Tesla has updated the blind spot camera on screen. It will now show up on the instrument panel display, which I think is something that is very long overdue for that vehicle. For their newest cars, they have a dashcam update and side camera recording. They say your vehicle's side cameras, B-pillar, will now be recorded to both dashcam and sentry clips, increasing the total number of camera angles from 4 to 6. Essentially, when you have a sentry mode event, this means that there will no longer be any blind spots. Although I am curious why it doesn't show the Cybertruck here yet. Next up today, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Lectric. Lectric e-bikes is one of America's fastest growing electric bike brands, having sold over 500,000 e-bikes in 5 years. Lectric's e-bikes are very easy to use, many come pre-assembled, and ones that require it can be assembled in about 5 minutes. Here I am assembling my Express and taking it for a ride. Coming from a different e-bike myself, this one really takes it to the next level. It's that difference you feel when a vehicle is just clearly more refined and designed from the ground up to be electric. Their flagship Lectric XP model is the third most popular electric vehicle nationwide, just behind the Tesla Model Y and 3. In 2023 as well, they introduced more people to electric vehicles via e-bikes than Ford, VW, and BMW combined. Lectric offers bikes that are affordable without compromising safety or quality. They were the first e-bike company to offer hydraulic brakes on e-bikes under $1,000. Most of their e-bikes go up to 28 miles per hour and have ranges over 50 miles. Their Expedition bike can drive 170 miles on a single charge. On top of that, they have over 75 unique accessories. I absolutely love how easily this bike changes gears, assists with pedaling, and accelerates with the throttle, among other things. On top of that, Lectric has partnered with Beast Philanthropy and other groups to better communities by donating e-bikes and helping build better infrastructure. Check out Lectric for yourself by clicking the link in the description below or scanning the QR code on screen. For a free bike cover on any purchase, use code SHAW at checkout. Alternate trip plans are a lot more clear at this point, and they're now offering the fastest, best amenities, and fewer stops options. Then for the Cybertruck, there are a couple updates. Comfort Drive mode will automatically be selected when autopilot is engaged, and then there's lane departure avoidance. For the Model 3, Model Y, new Model S and X, and new Model 3, and seemingly the new Model Y because that is what's actually shown in the picture here, Tesla has now added the ability to save trunk height based on location. So until now, you've been able to save a specific trunk height, maybe to not hit your garage door in your lower than normal garage. But now the car will actually remember that one and then remember all other settings you set for other areas you may go to frequently where you lower that trunk. I think that's a great feature. For the Cybertruck, since that's the only car with a manual frunk, that also has the same feature but for the frunk. And then you now have the option to avoid highways. I particularly like seeing this one because oftentimes I'm driving home during rush hour and I just want to go on streets instead of the highway, but I want to use full self-driving, and this is now available in Controls, Navigation, Avoid Highways. You can now switch between different language input methods on your touchscreen, and then they've added a pretty big feature for a lot of Tesla customers, the ability to keep accessory power on. Previously, Tesla had removed this feature, and it was disappointing to many who used things like powered coolers and other accessories that they would keep in their car powered on while away from the vehicle. Now Tesla says use or charge devices through USB ports, inductive phone charger, low voltage outlets, depending on what your vehicle is equipped with, after exiting your Tesla, as long as battery is greater than 20%. Then they list a few minor updates for media search results being filtered by sources. You can now shuffle an entire Apple Music playlist that contains more than 100 songs. Interesting that it seems it has to contain 100 songs in order for this to be possible. You can scroll through Sirius XM with steering wheel buttons, sign in with an Amazon Music free account, see what song will play next on YouTube Music playlists, and then if you use a hotspot frequently and it's enabled, it will automatically connect to your vehicle once you start driving. So a lot of great updates from Tesla here coming to most of their vehicles, and we should see this rolling out quite soon. Next up today, the situation with tariffs in the United States is obviously in flux. There's been a lot going on with this entire situation, but one thing has been consistent, and that is the 25% auto tariff. This is affecting vehicles that are not made in the US and are then imported, as well as auto parts that are then imported into the United States, even for vehicles that are assembled here. So every automaker, including Tesla, will be affected by this. But of course, there's the reciprocal tariffs going on right now, and this ended up increasing a lot over in China. For the time being, it looks like China's putting a 125% tariff on US imports, and the US is putting 145% on Chinese goods coming into the US. As such, we've seen a lot of different things affected, but the main thing we're seeing from Tesla that's on a big scale between the US and China is the Model S and X. Now, overall, Tesla is fairly localized with their production. They make the Model 3 and Y in the United States at their Fremont factory, but the Model Y is also made in Texas, and then their Giga Shanghai factory makes the Model 3 and Y for the Chinese market as well as surrounding European markets. Then Giga Berlin makes the Model Y for those immediate areas. This strategy helps them a lot so that they don't have to send vehicles overseas like they actually used to have to do with their Fremont factory. But they still do that with the Model S and X, since those cars are only made in Fremont in smaller volumes compared to the Model 3 and Y. So this has been the first vehicle directly affected by these new tariffs, as Tesla has officially removed the option to order these vehicles from their Chinese website. The option to order now has been removed for the Model S and X from their Chinese website and WeChat platform, which basically halts all new orders for the Model S and X in China. Now, these aren't the most in-demand cars over in China for Tesla especially. In 2024, they imported about 1,553 Model X's and 311 Model S's into China, which is of course a small fraction of their total sales in that country. And they're going to continue producing their Model 3 and Y at Giga Shanghai, no problem. But of course, with increased competition and then this, it just doesn't make sense that Tesla will be able to sell these cars in China. Instead, they're just halting orders and not planning to send them over there, at least for the meantime. So recently in the United States, for a different reason, we had seen Tesla canceling orders of people who purchased the Model Y launch series. Instead, they're canceling people's orders there and asking them to switch to the normal long-range all-wheel drive version, which was an interesting technique since it seems like they only did a limited production of that, which is kind of the opposite of what they did with the Cybertruck. That's still limited production, but they definitely have extra Foundation Series Cybertrucks. For the Launch Series Model Y, however, they have stopped it before even fulfilling orders. So we'll see what the situation of the Model S and X is over in China. I wouldn't be surprised if people do get their orders canceled as well, because they're just not going to be sending them over to China. Orders have stopped entirely, and then I wouldn't be surprised if they're just planning to cut imports as well. But over in the United States, there are various reports going on as to how these tariffs will affect automakers. A new study by the Center for Automotive Research looked into the impact of the new 25% tariffs, which, by the way, are not paused. There's that 90-day pause for tariffs, but this 25% tariff on cars has not been paused, at least not yet. In any case, this is expected to add around $108 billion in costs across the U.S. auto industry. That comprises $43 billion for imported parts and $64.7 billion for imported vehicles. The big three, GM, Ford, and Stellantis in particular, could incur about $41.7 billion in additional costs alone. So on average, they're expecting to add nearly $5,000 to the cost of each vehicle assembled in the United States and about $8,600 to each fully imported vehicle. And that is the cost to the automaker, so we'll see how much of that gets passed on to the consumer. But it seems like quite a bit probably will be, if nothing changes. In response to this, though, automakers are already starting to make moves. We know that GM is planning to increase production over in Indiana, and then for Stellantis, they've currently paused production in Mexico and Canada, which ultimately is the goal of these tariffs. But things are a little complicated here, and the Trump administration has already responded, saying they may give automakers some time. Quote, "I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies. They're switching parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here. But they need a little bit of time." That is how sourcing works, because for a lot of these companies, they're just immediately going to get these tariffs slapped onto their production, and they're massively scaled on parts and production at various locations throughout the entire world. In order to bring that into the United States, they need some time to get this done without just going under and completely losing their entire business. But it seems like some analysts feel that Tesla may be the most shielded company from these tariffs. As we know, for Tesla's vehicles that are sold in the US, they're all entirely made in the US, and the majority of their parts are made here as well. Of course, they still rely on some parts that are made in other countries, but Dan Ives feels that Tesla is better positioned than its competitors to handle the challenges posed by these tariffs. However, the situation over in China, which is a big part of Tesla's business, actually bigger than the United States, could be a lot more complex. Since there are all these tariffs and retaliatory tariffs over in China, even for Tesla making cars in China, we could see consumers there prefer domestic brands, which are getting very popular, like XPeng, NIO, and of course BYD. So of course, we'll see where this all goes, and I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow, or even by the time this video is going up, things have already changed, or there's some sort of 90-day pause, or even longer in order for automakers to shift their production and their supply of parts for their vehicles that they plan to make in the United States. Either way, for the time being, this is directly affecting the Model S and X, which seem to be no longer sold in China. We'll see if they ever come back to China, or if Tesla ends up deciding to make those cars over in China, but it seems like they're probably just planning not to export them anymore. Now, of course, these challenges come in the midst of challenges that Tesla has already been facing, like a lower quarter. For Q1, Tesla delivered 336,681 vehicles. That's still a great number of EVs sold, but of course it is a 13% decline year over year. However, when you look at the actual numbers, Tesla is still doing quite well in the United States. In fact, Tesla outsold the next 10 brands combined in Q1 of 2025. They sold about 128,100 EVs in the United States, and when you look at the full list of the next 10 brands, that's more than the next 10 combined. Of course, the Model 3 and Y continued to lead the charts there, and it is important to note that even with that decrease in sales for Tesla, the Model Y was a big part of it because of its changeover. Of course, there's all the factors that many people are aware of at this point, but in the midst of all that, Tesla is still selling a good number of cars, and more than any other US brands. In response to this, Elon Musk tweeted, "Not bad, Tesla." And that is something that I think a lot of analysts would want to see instead say good or great into the future. Not bad is true for these sales numbers, and they still did beat their local competitors by a long shot. But don't we want to see great things from Tesla? I think a lot of people would argue that. Tesla also tweeted this, saying, "Our owners rock." But then when you look at global numbers, Tesla was definitely beat in Q1 by BYD. BYD is their biggest competitor at this point, and they've still managed to outpace them when it comes to battery electric vehicles. But in Q1, they were beat by BYD. BYD sold 416,388 battery electric vehicles, whereas Tesla, of course, sold 336,681. There are all the factors at play here, and the fact that BYD has very cheap, affordable electric vehicles for sale. But it points out that that's something Tesla is going to need to take on. We need to see more affordable electric vehicles from them, or probably sales are not going to be able to increase all that much. The Cybertruck really hasn't helped out too much in this department. What I'm most curious to see, and what many analysts are curious to see, is how Q2 works for Tesla. The Model Y is now fully available, and in many areas of the country, it's actually readily available to the point where you can buy one today. So now that that car is officially able to buy, will that help Tesla in Q2? That remains to be seen. Next up today, Tesla is always working on self-driving, and we're seeing them implement it more and more at their factories. We originally saw this at their Fremont factory with cars like the Model 3 and Y, and now we're seeing it at their Texas factory with the brand new Model Y, as well as the Cybertruck. Tesla says Giga Texas production now uses FSD unsupervised to deliver cars from end of line to the outbound logistics lot. Over 50,000 driverless miles have been accrued between California and Texas factories so far. At the beginning of this video, we obviously see a Model Y exiting the factory, stopping for a Cybercab that passes, navigating all the way through in a sped up video, and then ending up at the final lot. And then they show the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck is particularly interesting here because it actually goes through a boring tunnel. Now, the boring tunnel where it operates in Las Vegas actually uses human drivers to transport passengers through that tunnel. FSD is obviously the goal there, but they haven't implemented it yet. But it looks like on the Cybertruck at Tesla's factory, they have already succeeded with that. Here we can see the Cybertruck entering that boring tunnel, navigating all the way through, and then exiting the tunnel on the other side, which is where the Cybertruck loads up, as well as many Model Ys that are passing. No matter what, when you consider that this is a closed loop, and it's geofenced, and it only has to face certain circumstances, it's still very impressive to see, and it's a cool upgrade to see for Tesla's vehicles. They come calibrated for full self-driving out of the gate, and they're actually driving this way immediately. Tesla goes on to say Model Ys autonomously navigate a 1.4-mile trip on a road shared with pedestrians, cars, semi-trucks, construction equipment, and more. And they have a full video of that entire route that it navigates. And then for Cybertrucks, they navigate a 0.6-mile route, traversing beneath one of America's fastest highways, emerging through a steep 17% grade to reach their destination. So it actually is navigating a pretty complex area in both scenarios, and it's not just something where it can go A to B without any issues in between. It does have to think. This is definitely a cool thing to see at their factories, and it's one more step towards true unsupervised self-driving. In fact, Tesla themselves tweeted after this saying one day it'll drive itself right to your house, and then Elon Musk of course added this year. That is a classic move from Elon Musk, giving very aggressive promises for full self-driving, and some think this may have to do with a little bit less than desirable earnings coming up, but we'll have to see. We'd of course love to see that functionality delivered this year. Next up today, one of the best parts about electric cars is all of the savings that you can have in regards to maintenance, especially when these cars are used as fleet vehicles. Well, the Bargersville Police Department in Indiana has realized substantial cost savings by integrating Teslas into their fleet. Over 5 years, they said they've saved nearly $500,000 in vehicle upkeep and repair costs. Since 2020, they've been saving about $70,000 to $80,000 annually due to the adoption of EVs. In June of 2024, their 4 Ford vehicles incurred over $3,100 in fuel costs, whereas their 13 Tesla vehicles had a combined charging cost of just $300 for the same month. Then the Tesla fleet had no required brake replacements, and any necessary repairs have been completed under warranty, with a turnaround time of only 3 days compared to a week for gas-powered vehicles. Their first acquired vehicle was in 2019 and then was sold for $21,000 after reaching close to 100,000 miles. So yes, it lost some value, but it still held a decent amount of value after 100,000 miles, and they were able to realize all of those cost savings throughout. This is definitely a cool thing to see for fleets and for police departments in general, and we'll see how this can scale up further into the future. That's all the latest Tesla news for today, so in the meantime, if you want to see the new car variant that Tesla just launched in the US, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.